Click the links you join the channel and check out the various other links. So I wanted to do a quick touch in this video quickly because it's the solution to this seems so obvious that any normal person would look at this and go, "Oh yeah, the airline has policies in place. They simply have to buy a seat. If you're overweight, you spill out into the seat next to you." It's like the airlines already have those policies in place. So but because of political correctness, like we just can't go to that specific, simple, easy solution. So what happened was she was on a flight from, I don't know, New York to Dallas or something, and she had these, and the newspaper reporting is so hostile to her because she's some kind of right wing commentator, or as they call her, an alleged right wing commentator, and so their presentation of it is so one-sided and hostile. And then I actually listened to her video on Odyssey. It came up in the playlist automatically. And she's telling her side of the story, and it's really funny. But you hear this, you go, "Oh, this is just such an obvious solution. Like, just enforce the policies you already have in place." Now, airlines started putting like they probably already always had these informal policies, but sometime in the 80s and 90s, as people got fatter and fatter because of fast food and junk food, they started they put these policies in their terms and conditions. No, I've never needed it, but they've had this for a long time, and they've enforced this stuff for a long time. You have to these two large people were sitting, and they had the middle seat, and it's their own fault for taking a middle seat. It's like you really want to wait for a flight where you can get an aisle seat. And it's like to put these two people together. It's like, well, the logical thing for the airline would have been, okay, they have to buy the middle seat. If you can't sit with your armrest down, you can't intrude into other people's space. She couldn't even put her tray table down because this lady next to her, the belly and the leg fat was just so huge. I mean, that's you're paying for a seat and you're not getting it. You're feeling ripped off. You are ripped off. You should get a refund for that. But the thing is, you never have to have the situation in the first place. All the airline has to do is make these two fat people have policies in place, which they already have. Oh, okay, we'll just enforce those policies, make them pay for that middle seat. Oh, yeah. Now, what happened was they're kind of slowing down on enforcing these policy and screwing over the people who were flying is because of political correctness. Like the simple solution is to make them pay for the middle seat. That's the best of a bad situation. Why can't we do that? Oh, because you're fat shaming them. That's not real. You're paying for a certain square inch on the airplane. You're paying for what you're using. You should get what you pay for. But because of political correctness, these terms and conditions they've had for decades, suddenly they're getting a little shy on enforcing because they don't want these fat people to go to Twitter and social media and just whine and kvetch because then it makes the airline look bad. But realistically, I think most people are on the side of the skinny chick because most people look at it and go, yeah, the airline tickets are so expensive. You want everything you pay for, and if someone's effectively taking your seat, why wouldn't you charge them? I mean, why wouldn't you make them enforce the policy you already have that they have to pay for a separate seat? Like, there's no fat shaming. Obesity is a negative thing. It negatively impacts your health, and there's no system in place to address that because of political correctness is destroying everything. Where like at the executive level or at the state level, you should have CDC or President's Council on Fitness or the Governor's Council on Fitness should come out and be like, oh, we're going to have a Fit California thing and talk about the dangers of obesity. And suddenly, like that's a very obvious, very real danger. 9 out of 10 doctors are going to tell you, or 9 out of 10 doctors or 100% of the doctors who study this area are going to tell you, yeah, it's a negative thing. And when you have interviews with like these health at every size people, it's like they always have interviews with these writers and these activists, but you don't have interviews with the doctors who are doing research in the field because they'll tell you something different. And you're not going to listen to an activist when you have a doctor to tell you something that you don't need a doctor. Everyone clearly knows. Like, so aren't you going to have a lot of associated health problems with obesity? Like in our own empirical understanding of the situation, we're not, I mean, you're not selling this to people where you think, oh, there can be health at every size. No, there can't. Because if you think you're going to be doing all these physical activities at a 200 pounds that you're supposed to be doing at 130 pounds, your center of mass, your center of gravity is different. You're gonna have more joint injuries. You're gonna have more tissue damage, and you're just not walking up hills at 200 pounds when you should be like 120 pounds. Like, because we've all been a few pounds overweight, we know what that feels like to be out of breath going up a hill when you're in shape and you can just jog up the hill. Like, you're not fooling anybody with this kind of fat acceptance stuff. But because of political correctness, like, there's no system in place. I remember back in the 80s, I mean, a little bit before my time, when Reagan and Schwarzenegger, they were doing like the President's Council on Fitness, and it was a thing. And then after that, it kind of faded away. I think Bush might have done a little bit too. But like, you don't see that currently. You don't see that anymore recently within the past like 20 years, 15, 10 years, and things got super, super woke because it's not politically correct. And as a consequence, like, if you incentivize something, you'll get more of something. And if you, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you take away shame, you're gonna get, it's like if it's like a brake on a system, and you take the foot off the brake, then you get more and more. And even in my own lifetime and your lifetime too, you've seen people get bigger and bigger, and to the point of this, like, you can see this I don't know if their sex is, and how the seatbelt is supposed to fit at your waistline, but when you don't have a waistline, I mean, this is like, there's no way you're going to sell this to anyone. And she's trying to show I think these people were wearing, I don't know what you call those, not tank tops, but whatever this kind of half shirt is, with like just morbid, gross obesity. It's like, now they go, oh, those are medical terms, and it's not politically correct to use those terms anymore. Okay, well, I mean, but this is the same group of people who thinks a woman can have a penis, so I don't really see how we can even have any communication whatsoever. And I want to talk about this because the left is not self-correcting because of this oppression hierarchy. And the reason the article came down on her is because she's, I guess, vaguely conservative, though as I listened to her a few times, I haven't heard her saying it. She sounds like a normie to me. Um, but that explains the media bias in presenting this. But the left in general, with whatever their ideas, whether it's fat shaming or any kind of other, Frankfurt School Marxist, Saul Alinsky, Moses Mordecai Levy nonsense, it's all cultural Bolshevism. Whenever they get on a kick with something, it's why their ideas are not self-correcting, and why blue cities are not self-correcting. Because it means, like, blue city, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the insane crime rates that you're seeing nowadays, and you can't even talk about it on social media because you'll simply get kicked off for being honest. So they're not self-correcting, because to pluck at the policy of left-wing policies, and to say, if San Francisco ever woke up and go, yeah, we're going to have to start putting people in prison for a long time, and we're also going to have to make those prisons they can't have cell phones, they can't have TV, and they can't watch movies. It's going to have to make it a punishment. It's not cruel and unusual, but no, they don't need cell phones and TVs. They can't make TikTok videos in prison. It has to be a punishment and not just a vacation. It's a dangerous vacation, but a lot of people do view it as not a big deal. Yeah, it all has to change. And so for the left wing, and like San Francisco or California, to turn around and say, oh yeah, we have to address these issues, I mean, addressing any of that is politically incorrect, or with fat shaming, it's like, that's not a real term. And so when you start saying, it's like you start pulling the threads, you start saying, yeah, that's not a real term either. It's just a way to control NPCs and compel behavior through social media pressure and fear. And the media is driving a lot of this. And people start looking at the media, which people are starting to awaken to. These Machiavellian machinators, these fomenters of discord a little bit now, that these people are, these puppet masters are pulling strings, and it's they have interests adverse to ours, and very detrimental to our health and well-being, where none of these like cities can fix themselves and go, oh yeah, we're going to have to start having like tough on crime policies. One time California had that, but that was when the demographics were different, three strikes kind of stuff. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to go back to that eventually. Like, left-wing people themselves, they're either going to move out of San Francisco and it's going to collapse, or they're eventually going to have to vote for far-right politicians to get stuff back on track. Like, you got a city council that was it Scott Wiener or Anthony Weiner or something, who was decriminalizing some very horrific things. I can't even. Yeah, he's like San Francisco State Senator Weiner. You can look him up. He looks exactly like you'd expect him to look. So like, none of these things, they can't self-correct, because she's I don't know what her ethnicity is. Say she's English, because she comes from that prison colony. So she's a fair English girl. So and she's conservative. Her place on the oppression hierarchy is below these two obese people who have got their oppression Olympics. So in this complicated matrix on the left, this is how they kind of decide things. so they can't fix this. Like the airlines just can't come out and fix this. Even they can't even enforce the policies they have in place. Like even on social media, the airline answered her tweet with a snarky little tweet like, "Oh, people come and you should be less of a bigot." It's like, but you already have policies in place. Why don't you just enforce it? And the airline doesn't have an answer to that, and the reason is political correctness. Like 10 years ago, they would have enforced it. Maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, things were, that's like when the fat acceptance thing or fat positivity or whatever kind of really took off. And I mean, you see the people who are pushing it, you look at them, you're like, are there adults in the America's room? Are the adults going to come back in the room? And is somebody going to, like somebody, you think, oh, some governor at the state level, or some president is going to come out with some kind of CDC is going to come out, the Council on Fitness, somebody's going to start coming out and say, yeah, we're going to have to push back against this narrative that the entire mainstream media is pushing. You realize, like, yeah, nobody's there. There are like everyone knows it's not healthy, but you have the entire mainstream media pushing it as health, and take pride in yourself, take pride in dying of obesity. It's like it's not healthy. Every interview you seem to skip over the doctors in the field. You're talking to activists because you're massaging this information to create your own narrative, and like everyone's looking around at the media getting weirder and weirder, and eventually it's going to hit the point where people go, oh, we're being manipulated by these Marxist media, aren't we? Eventually people will wake up to that, but it's probably going to get pretty bad before that wakes up. So you get this stuff like this. Airlines, obese people were, oh yeah, just buy 2 seats. That's the enforce a policy you already have in place. Oh yeah, it's such a simple solution that we can't take it. Or these cities, you're going to have to clean up these blue cities. You're going to have to enforce you can't just decriminalize things. Otherwise, you get massive amounts of looting and the stores have to leave the area. I mean, you can keep excusing it and calling everyone Istophobic. But as a consequence, those places leave, those stores, those anchor stores leave the area, the geographic area, and the people who are there. It's like, oh, now you have a food desert, or now you have a retail desert, and you can't get your prescriptions. You can't go to the store because the city had a $950, or the state had a $950 policy of unenforcement. It's like, oh, well, you're just going to get mass amounts of crime, and the store's going to leave. Oh, we don't feel that's the reason the store left. Whatever, but the store did, in fact, leave. In fact, many stores, oh, but they shut down for different reasons. Well, we're not idiots. You can see that there's a correlation here. And the fact of the matter remains is, like, the stores themselves all across the country where these policies went in place, they all left, and they're not there anymore. Like, no other stores moved in to serve that community because the state was not. Like, you don't want to be right when the state is wrong. And you can't enforce, like, if the state wants this, you elect these people, these globalists, these Soros DAs, these Soros appointed, or Larry Fink or Schwab or Rothschilds, whatever. You elect these people to destroy the state, and then you act surprised when the state is destroyed. So that's what you voted for. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys in the next episode.